And welcome everyone to Legends of Water for Thursday, April 17th. We are now past Q1, and I have some exciting updates for you on the stats for the first quarter. We are the world's new water network, and you're going to hear some amazing news about how we're going to go big and bigger. All right, let's do the mandatory disclaimers, safe harbor statement, of course, meaning that anything we say has to be qualified by, might not happen. And of course, the two investment disclosures, and there we are. Okay, so breaking. We have quarterly numbers. Now, these are preliminary. They are not the final. They will be in the quarterly filing on 15 May. But meanwhile, let's take a look at what is happening here. We're basically running about 2.5 times ahead of last year. Both PWT and MWS are doing very well. Let's break that down just a little bit here. Because $2 million, what does that mean? Well, it means a run rate of over $8 million for the year, which is excellent, way, way, way up from where it's been. And interestingly enough, if you look at MWS has a business plan. First of all, it's a record. If we annualize the numbers now, they'll be at almost 3 million, which beats the big year of 2022. And they have a forecast, they have a business plan that requires investment. And they're actually ahead of that forecast. They were only required to make 437,000, but they did 2.6 times that. So this is fantastic because they're going for a $5.2 million year. This is where our investors can help, and I will show you the amazing, huge, amazing plan for that. All right. Now we're going to turn to the podcast, so we have a quick edit of the Green and Red podcast. So here we go.
Robert F. Kennedy, speaking about water, has made comments to the effect about wanting to get rid of fluoride in the water and other environmental health issues related to water. I'm wondering if you could actually talk a little bit about what that would mean if he were to remove fluoride from the water.
Of course, the good news about fluoride is you can just switch it off, right? It's not something you have to try and eliminate from the stream. If the decision is made to stop feeding dietary fluoride, then it's just a matter of literally flipping a switch. And that's very different from some of the other problems. So number one, I think that it's really good that we're looking at the quality of the water because, Scott, one problem we got in this country is we really take water for granted. Faucet turns on, water comes out. Flush the toilet, water goes away. But in fact, we have a general disintegration of our water systems. And it's literally the infrastructure spend is running, by the end of the decade, we'll be running $500 billion a year behind. So that's manifesting itself increasingly in ways that people are noticing. For example, a sewage line break every 2 minutes in America, things that are local and they add up. And then, of course, you have the problem of the canaries in a coal mine, right? Flint, Michigan, Compton, California. These are Miami-Dade County. These are places that are having troubles and for various reasons. The biggest problem from the point of view of water quality is how do you get industry to be responsible for the effluents? The current system, I'm a factory, I dump stuff with forever chemicals, it goes to the city, takes care of it, I'm good. But what they've been finding is that they're now being sued by class action consumers for those very same forever chemicals that the city treated. The attorneys aren't going after the city, they're going after the originator. And so the original polluter is going, wait a minute, I sent this to the city. What happened? And they're realizing that they need to do it themselves. So that's really a major step in terms of taking away pollution.
So when you say them, you're talking about like communities. Is that like smaller cities or is that like community groups or who exactly is the them there?
Consumers as a class are suffering from what we are calling forever chemicals. There's a long and completely misunderstood set of initials, but basically it's the stuff that's in Teflon. And these are microplastics that basically are everywhere. And number one, they don't biodegrade, so they stay in the system, they stay in the groundwater, et cetera. But number two, there's a continuing added supply of it. It's constantly being added to, which makes the problem worse. So the first step really is, okay, what do we do to stop this thing from happening? And that's where industrial responsibility is key. And that's really our focus. Now, let's say that we are totally in favor of the cities continuing to supply the fresh water. That should not be privatized. It's always been a bad idea. Whenever cities in the US and the UK particularly have privatized fresh water, it's been a disaster. Let the government, because it's an equity issue, let them continue to feed the water. But what about the wastewater? And that's completely overwhelming the cities, and it needs to be taken off their plate. And that's where we restore industrial responsibility. The good news is that it works well for industry. They see a financial benefit. If they're doing their own water treatment, number one, they are free of the hyperinflation going on in water and sewage rates, which are inflating faster than college tuition and healthcare costs. Nobody's noticing it, but it's happening. Some places it's as high as 14% of people's home budget, which is ridiculous. It's literally creating defaults. And when you default on your water, all of a sudden you've got bottled water, it's hygiene issues, it's horrible. So the first thing that these industries can do is move off the grid, and now they control their costs. It's just the cost of the regular maintenance. And that gets them away from the inflation, number one. Number two, they can recycle. And if they recycle their water, they're able to reuse it and pay less water rates, and of course help the environment. It produces less drought, less scarcity rather. And the final point, which is probably the most important one, is they're out of the clutches of the municipality. As long as they remain permit approved, then they're just left on their own, and they like that. It's definitely a trend. Companies are doing it. It's virtuous. It works for their ESG ratings, et cetera. But it works financially.
And how does it work financially?
Like I was saying, they're free of the inflation. They get to recycle, which saves on water rates. The other big thing that we're doing is we're now making it possible for them to be just not pay the capital expense of that water system. Because think about it. If you're a brewery, it was not in your business plan to fund a water treatment system. That was the city. All of a sudden, you're being asked to do it, but you don't have that $1 million. And so a lot of people have a capital problem if they're supposed to do their own water treatment. So really, water as a service is the answer and that's the major thing where we're doing right now is we're taking money from investors and getting these water as a service installations done. So the investors help the fund buy the machine, put it on site. It remains the property of the fund and the investors and generates revenue because the customer just pays by the gallon as he's accustomed to. So it's a transfer of the meter from the city to the private in a sort of a co-location scenario. Works very well because on top of the fact they're not paying CapEx, all the maintenance is included so that they don't have to worry about that machine in the corner. It's taken care of. So it's an ideal solution. People are rushing to do it. It's very popular.
And as the more and more studies, more and more reports are coming out about the huge amount of microplastics that they're finding in everything from rainwater to snow on top of Everest to things like that. And then so has the sort of increasing crisis, I would call it, around microplastics. Has that been adding sort of motivation and incentive to see more of this?
Absolutely. So industry is now being held responsible. Like I was saying, there's class action suits being initiated against the polluters. So they are forced to be responsible. So this actually makes it so that they discharge their responsibility better than the city could, right? Because they're not being overwhelmed and stuff. Now, I must say there's a basic problem, Scott, when you look at microplastics, which is you clean out the microplastics. Now you're left with reject water. And so now that's a secondary issue, which is how do you then dispose of that water? Our systems basically have a sludge tank that's over time, it fills up and it gets emptied out. And people have to do the right thing with that sludge. But assuming that people do the right thing, you've got a system that over time will eliminate the forever chemicals.
Like how widespread is your program, for lack of a better word?
See, the big challenge with downsizing to the local user is you have to figure out how to miniaturize these giant water systems. And we've done that. So we have these modular pods, and that division is called Modular Water Systems, modularwater.com. And what they do is they have these completely compact and self-contained systems. And they've done, since we launched them in 2018, maybe 500 of these. So one of them has done thousands, but they're of every variety possible, power plants, insurance companies, you name it. And then the other has been doing a lot of trailer parks and RV campgrounds. Any places disconnected from sewage, we tend to service because they have to have something. Now, where we're going is, think of it as a inverted triangle. the bottom of that triangle is the people who absolutely have to do it or else they can't operate. That's the people we're working with today. The next level up is the people who would do it, be a nice idea, but they don't want to go through the hassle or the capital expense. And that's what we're addressing with the service.
I'm from East Texas. I grew up in the suburbs of Dallas and have a lot of deep roots. I'm curious about how that has been catching on amongst people in places like Sherman. It's not a blue zip code out. Those aren't blue zip codes for sure.
Yeah, but we have, for example, contracts with the chip fabs the chip fabs have their own ultra pure water setups, right? They have to have water that's so pure that it will not short out an electric circuit. It's a pure insulant, right? And so they have equipment on site. And we had TI as a customer years ago, which of course dominates the whole area. Right. But we're working with chip fabs on the ultra pure water. We're also working with power plants. So it's really, these are Progressive Water Treatment, which is our unit in Sherman, is dealing with companies that have already bitten the bullet. They do it as a matter of course. They need their cooling tower water cleaned, or they need their chip fab water cleaned, or the power plants need their water cleaned. So these are people that are already doing their own water treatment, and that has been gone for a long time. So they don't have to be blue to be this part of their operating basis, right? And now modular water has been doing stuff like, for example, there's a big land boom going on between Dallas and the Oklahoma border. And so now we're starting to see a lot of housing developments that are outpacing municipal sewage. So what do? They put in place one of our drop-in containers, and we have one on our site, on our Origin Clear YouTube. You can see on Lake Denison, there's a beautiful estate development, and they have one of those little 40-foot containers doing all the black water treatment, and it was working fine.
Riggs, it's been talking with you and everyone else out there. Make trouble and misbehave, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Amen to that.
That was a great little show, and let's move right along here. Well, April's Legend of Water. That person's name is not April, by the way. And who is it? Well, let's just talk about what's going on here. There used to be investing shows. Remember Shark Tank back in the day? There's kind of a drought of those. But really, when I look at my feed on X, it's all about investing and how to accumulate money and so forth. It's time for another investing show. And how about Water on Demand on TV? There is a show now in pre-production called The Raise, which is going to follow the process of Water on Demand and others, but spotlighting Water on Demand with their fundraising process. And this is destined for the free ad-supported streaming TV channel, FAST Worldwide, which is huge. It's projected to reach almost $12 billion in 2025. These are all the Roku and YouTube and so forth type broadcasts that are going on. And it is huge, driven by evolving consumer preferences for cost-effective streaming alternatives, meaning it's cheap, it's free, and that is driving a lot of adoption. Well, there is actually a studio that is leading in this area, and that is American Stories Entertainment, and they are doing fascinating shows. For example, Surviving Men is now in season 4, and it airs all over the place on the Pursuit channel. Very, very successful show, one of many by American Stories. Well, the co-founders are Robert and Tolly Cefail, and Robert Cefail is here today. So say hi to Bob Cefail.
Hello, folks. How you doing?
So, Bob, it is so cool. We've known each other for quite a while, and my brother, Stephen, he's a director on your shows, I believe.
That's right.
And he and I were in the film business long ago, but I'm not going to start with old man stories. It's amazing that you are now...
They were black and whites.
Exactly. But they've colorized them. On AMC. They're on AMC colorized.
Yes.
Anyway. So, but it's really interesting because I don't know how it happened, but you had this brilliant moment where you realized, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to do this show tracking, companies raising money, and here's one that we know. So tell us about how this idea germinated.
Well, Yeah, American Stories has been focusing on different verticals where there's a tremendous demand for viewing, yet there's a very low amount of supply. And if you take a look at the business show space, you've got Shark Tank and you've got nothing else. There was a show called The Prophet, but that lasted 3 seasons because they kind of focused on becoming a dumpster fire show, kind of stuff not relevant to raising capital. So you have literally, it's not a reach to say there are hundreds of millions of people worldwide interested in the ins and outs of raising capital. And the thing everybody should understand is there's almost 6 billion cell phone users. And that's the primary platform for viewing content now. I mean, sure, you have smart TVs, which are huge, about 160 million in the US. And our channel, American Stories Network, is being uploaded in those as we speak. But you have to take a look at the whole mix of delivery systems, and you have almost 6 billion people with cell phones. And so that's what American Stories is about. We are delivering our shows. I call us the Hydra. We have many different ways to reach people. It allows us to not get caught up in the cancel culture, but business TV there's a huge demand, lack of supply, and frankly, when I watch what you and your partner Ken were doing, and the amount of knowledge you guys have, it's a natural fit. I mean, smart guys, lots of experience. And that's what our audience wants to see. They want smart guys, lots of experience, learn things. And that's what the Raise is all about.
And you saw that, Ken is the matinee idol you were looking for.
I have a face for radio. Yes.
Well, actually, all kidding aside, I own a celebrity endorsement company. I've done almost 800 engagements. I work with hundreds and hundreds of sports, music, TV, and film stars, and not trying to blow Ken's head up, but he's a perfect fit for this type of show.
Well, it's going to be really interesting, and we wanted to go multiple seasons. And it is actually very, very important for this country. I think you're going to do a hit TV show, make a lot of money and all that. But more importantly, I think that you're going to give people a lot of knowledge that they're thirsting for, which is how the heck do I raise money? It's people just don't know how, and they, only a tiny percentage of companies get funded, unfortunately.
And the business story behind Bob's brilliant plan is he's the network that he doesn't have to spend a couple $100,000 shooting a pilot and then beg people to pick it up. His genius way of producing television content, this thing's paid for before. What'd you say, Bob? Before I turn on a light?
Before the lights turn on, baby.
Camera, right?
Yep.
This thing is paid for with integrated advertising, which in some way is going to fit. So I'm going to have a lot of fun thinking about all the integrative advertising for the Rays, right?
Oh,
and we might do a spinoff called Surviving Ken. Right?
There you go.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, we're going to have a lot of fun. And look, 300,000 companies in America go out of business every year just because of financing. The next cure for cancer, some world-changing invention may never see the light of day, not because it couldn't change everything, but because they ran out of capital. So giving companies insight on how they can get their idea to the market and broadcasting it on American Stories. Of course, American Stories is in its own major growth phase too. We'll be talking about that on a show. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I love the fact that the company that Riggs and I co-founded will be a featured show on there. That might actually that might create a lot of excitement for us on the investment front as well.
Well, quite frankly, I mean, just to give you an idea of the staggering numbers that we're touching outlets. I mean, on just one network, and we have many networks, just one show is rolling out, just broke 4 million minutes viewed a month.
Wow.
And when you expose the message of Origin Clear to that many people.
Right.
Oh, I mean,
Right.
you just think about it. I mean,
Right.
I know you guys are in on a raise right now. Whoever's out there better get in, because I am
Yeah.
telling you, when we license, we're going to license the raise. All of a sudden, you're going to see it on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and a bunch of other multi-letter, streaming channels, and it's just going to be out there. So.
I've talked with a lot of folks in your space too, right? We've had occasions to have some group meetings lately. The thing I thought was really, really exciting is the fact that Newsmax recently had an IPO. Now, anybody who followed Newsmax IPO saw the stock. Oh, it was a $10, kind of pre-IPO price. It went to $253 a share within a couple of days, right? I think even now it's probably $40 or $50. So even at this level, it is by every stretch of the imagination a home run. One of the keys to the success, I believe, of that, they did a fundraising prior to IPO. It was a Regulation A, which we can talk more about water on demand's Regulation A. We could be live any day, any second now. But what they did was every time they had a broadcast, and it's a very narrow audience, Bob. It's not like your audience. Your audience literally has something for everyone, right?
Yes.
From rough and tumble stuff, you had The Shot, shooting shows. You're going to have business shows, and I'm sure you've got stuff that's a lot more lighthearted, right? The point is that Newsmax has a very narrow audience, right? And they just put that link. Hey, if you want to invest in Newsmax, click here, right? They had, and they just ran it for a couple of years, right? So it was so oversubscribed that, of course, the company did it fabulously well when it finally went to the market. I think that's a formula for American stories and for water on demand, to run that in the scroll, right?
100%.
Maybe not just on the raise, but on every show you put out. Look.
Well, don't forget, we have Boom America, which Riggs was in. I mean, that's 32 episodes, folks.
Right.
32. And it's starting to roll out right now. And you bet your riches we're going to be doing things like what you just described.
And the way I look at it like this, audiences like to be part of what and they very rarely get to actually interact and kind of reach into their entertainment, right? But if you're running a show like Surviving Man, if Surviving Man has 3 million viewers per season, if 1% of those investors decide they want to put money into into company's Regulation A offering at $1,000 minimum investment, that's $30 million. That's 1%. I would estimate that the numbers could be much, much higher, but that's an exciting prospect. And I think that's what you and I kind of developed in our kind of game planning this out over the coming months. So that's really exciting stuff.
Well, if I could mention this one last thing, I don't know Origin Clear's liquidity plan down the line. I'm assuming there's maybe some talk about going public at some point. I don't know. I'm not in your board.
Uplisting, yeah, because we're currently public, Origin Clear.
The show is going to be featuring Water on Demand.
So we spawned Water on Demand, which is destined and I don't want to start going ballooning this show because we have a lot more to cover. But I do want to say that, and by the way, Regulation A is a industry term, which means crowdfunding. It means anybody can invest, basically. And so it was a revolution when it happened. Strangely enough, it was on Obama's administration, 2013. And it is huge for TV because literally somebody in Sumatra can invest $200. I mean, it is amazing what they could do to democratize investment. And yes, Water on Demand is destined to NASDAQ, and I will be showing our audience very shortly how that's working. So
I own a network. Remember that.
You own a network, or as some would say,
we know a guy. We know a guy.
Somebody.
Yeah, well, you probably totally would say that the network owns you, but
There you go.
Right now, the network owns you. We're going to turn that around, right?
Right. I love the invention. American Stories has an amazing slate, and their business model is to just have a tremendous amount of productivity and creativity.
You want to plug where they can see some American Stories entertainment real quick?
Well, actually, you go to americanstories.tv, and that's the platform. And from there, you can learn all the places you can watch our shows, and you can watch shows on demand right there.
Excellent.
Americanstories.tv.
Fantastic. Let me cover one more important topic here in the show. So, who has heard of qualified opportunity zones? This is interesting. The biggest challenge that we've had at Water Demand is we are able to achieve funding, but it's what you would call trickle funding, right? And so it's not real capital that you can put into real assets in any kind of massive way. I'm talking about, $100 million plus kind of assets. And so this is an opportunity, and let me show you why. All right, so what is a QOZ? What's it all about? Well, again, our good friend Timothy from Prolific Consulting set up a little deck here. What are they all about? Well, back in 2017, when opportunity zones were set up, 8,000 zip codes were selected in America that were considered distressed. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, some of them are no longer distressed. They're actually doing really well, but they're still on the list. So it has been very, very successful. And what kind of businesses can operate? Well, a whole list. And by the way, it's been dominated by commercial real estate. That's been kind of the niche all this time. But you can see startups, you can see all kinds of interesting things, right? Okay. And what they do is they enable impact investment, meaning that they target needs of the community, and there are tax benefits, and that's where it gets interesting. U.S. investors can receive certain tax benefits when they realize capital gains. So your investment goes from, 1 million to 10 million. That difference of 9 million is not taxable if you keep it there long enough. And so the question is, why now? Well, we have a new administration, and believe me, they love the qualified opportunity zones, and so do Democrats. It's highly bipartisan. We expect there will be a federal extension sometime this year, and it dramatically reduces the cost of capital, and it brings a new demographic of investors, which are people who are trying to reinvest gains. For example, they sold their business, and they got money, and now they would rather Uncle Sam not grab it. Well, they can put it in an opportunity zone fund. And, through a process, they get tax benefits. So this is
where this also has an advantage is in 1031 exchanges, because you only have 45 days, right, for a real estate transaction. So this extends the time that you can deploy that capital for up to 6 months, which I think is very beneficial.
Very true. So we're working with EZOZ Opportunity Funds, and Tim Washington is our good friend, and they have done a tremendous amount. They're veterans. Okay, a ton of investments. And here's the important thing to know: there'll be more than $1 trillion in capital gains this year in America alone in 2025, and we can get a major share of that. So what happens next? Well, there's a whole process. I'm not going to get into it, but we have begun that process, obviously. And this is the timeline. So it takes about 3 weeks to prep the fund, and then to prep the company, and then to set up the fund is another 30 days. And now it runs for 10 years. Why does it run for 10 years? It's because the law says that if you hold it for 10 years, your investment, then you get a forgiveness of all gains inside the fund. It's like a huge Roth IRA, but it's actually much, much bigger. So it's amazing. And this just explains that individual investors or corporate investors can put money in. And if you look at the box at the bottom, you can either have a direct holding in a zone, so a zip code that is on that list, or you can have a headquarters or an office in the zone that invests elsewhere. In other words, you can invest basically everywhere. So that's the opportunity, and thank you, Tim. So let's discuss a little bit what's going on here with us. Remember Water Like an Oil Well? That was and remains a huge way to describe the water opportunity. Early access to a generational asset, just like oil wells. Remember, people can invest in oil wells and they can actually end up passing it on to their next generation. And that's really what drives a lot of people, especially after they get up to a certain age. Now, the big difference was that oil and gas has amazing tax benefits. And we didn't have those because only the oil and gas industry does. And so we had to create very complex offerings. And that has created a lot of work. But what if we had the tax benefits that the oil and gas industry has? And that is the opportunity here. So, truly, water like an oil well. Let's take a look at the plan really fast here. We're planning to do a $100 million water on demand opportunity zone fund. It will invest in assets such as water systems, and also in, for example, when we acquire companies, we can acquire the assets of the companies, as well as stock and water on demand, which will fund water on demand. Now, it eliminates taxes on fund growth over 10 years. And here's the interesting part. Your existing gains that you come in through, which are harder to eliminate, we can eliminate through asset depreciation, and there's no recapture at the end. In other words,
no depreciation recapture. That I was hoping you'd mention that, because my antenna went up when he mentioned that. I was like, oh my goodness.
Exactly.
So if we deploy a piece of equipment for $1 million, if someone invests $1 million, and that's mostly going to be subject to cap gain, right? It's from a cap gain. They want to turn it into 10 million and pay no taxes on that, but they still owe money on the million. Okay. The potential here is to deploy $1 million piece of equipment, that for those funds go to that $1 million piece of equipment. If that's depreciated right out of the gate, that could reduce or potentially even eliminate that from a taxable basis. That investment from a taxable basement could potentially be very little or nothing. Now we're going to still work through the fine tuning of that, but it provides a very strong incentive for specific cap gain investments to target various assets that we want to make happen along the way. And that is really exciting.
Now, I have a third column here, which is even more exciting. The fund sponsor, which is basically the sweat partner, the one that gets things done, that's basically us, has automatically, by law, 20% of the total fund. So that means up to $20 million of the up to $100 million. We plan to make that sponsorship available to preferred investors we choose, and they will get it at a discount. It will be for $5 million. The group of investors will get up to a $20 million chunk of the fund, and then they can roll over into the fund, and they will effectively have had a 75% discount entry into the main fund. And I think that is so exciting that it kind of blew our mind today. That it's
like a triple Indy. You know, they're getting they don't want to they want the tax benefits that are applied with being in part of the LP part of the fund, right?
Limited partner.
Right. They want, the limited partner. So the idea is to come in at a massive discount, 80%, 75% discount, 80% discount, and then be able to enter, that once the fund is up and running, they can then enter the investor part of it also with a massive discount. So the actual return there has the potential to be, it's 4 or 5 fold before they've started, in theory. And we're going to work through the details on that and lay that out carefully, how that looks.
It's a famous quote from Orwell's Animal Farm, which is, we're all equal, but some are more equal than others. Yes. And that's what this is about.
Right.
All right. So this is a quick look at what's going on. We're super excited, working very, very fast on this. And we've now arrived at the freewheeling discussion. And I just want to end my what I was saying about the QOZ fund. And that is that for the first time, we're seeing, that very major interest. For example, the legions of companies being sold, the exits are taxable, and now we can literally provide an exit. So business brokers, for example, are huge players in this space, many more. So we think that this is beyond exciting. That's my take, and we are moving very quickly on this.
Yeah. So, and I think the ability to talk to, so a different set of investors, financial planners, asset managers, As you said, business brokers, people that are arranging, I have a $10 million cap gain. What do I do? Right. Normally they'd be stuck in a commercial. They'd have to put that into a commercial real estate thing. Right. What else are you going to buy? You're not going to buy, maybe you buy 50 single family homes, but that's, then you're in a whole different business. So we know that and we heard from the guys who run this fund, 99% of it is commercial real estate. And it's a saturated appetite right now. He said there is no companies that are in there. And I think personally, small emerging growth companies actually have major advantages inside one of these funds. Why, Riggs? I'm glad you asked. Because what is the first thing that they're going to do? They're going to grow. They're going to buy things. They're going to expand. And they're going to get what? Capital expenses. If those capital expenses can be then kind of ported over to the limited partners in the form of a depreciation that doesn't have to be recaptured, right? The millions and millions and millions of dollars that enter this fund first, potentially, if they're coming in already as cap gains, have the potential ability to be dramatically reduced out of the outset just because, and I think only growth companies really offer that. I don't think a commercial real estate or a real estate project would offer that sort of, dramatic expense like that, right? So I think growth companies, it's been unrecognized, but I think they have major advantages for those who are really seeking to not just grow their money in a tax-free environment, which everyone wants to do, but what to do about that initial tranche. Right? I think growth companies have the greatest potential to affect that initial tranche to the greatest extent. That's super exciting. So not that I don't like paying taxes. I really do.
No, but what I'm really trying to figure out, and maybe, Bob, you can help me with this, is how do we make Ken enthusiastic about this? I really want to know. Because I'm just not feeling it. I just don't know.
More coffee, that's how.
Sorry about that. Maybe my selection as the host was the wrong move.
Well, AJ, you've been very quiet, and some of this you hadn't heard yet today. So tell me your reaction on all this.
Well, so my reaction is it's incredible. There's this massive movement that's happening right now, and so many people have been angsty about markets and have been looking at the markets, and we had all this tariff stuff. But for those of you that are paying attention, you would already know that there's over $5 trillion of new investment being made in America, in manufacturing sectors, in energy sectors, in all of these emerging massive infrastructural sectors. And hello, they all need water, right? And so when you take this massive amount of demand that's being created by all of this reshoring and new business, right? New manufacturing coming to the country, all the new demand on energy and new demands on water. It makes me so excited to see that there are mechanisms that we're discovering beyond, again, like you said, we didn't have the tax benefit to be able to lean into. Now we found this mechanism to be able to do that and to be able to bring new types of investors to the table that have more capital to play with in a space that is going to be explosive, right? And real estate is a crapshoot right now. Everyone knows that. My wife and I are looking at we're putting together a vision board of what the future looks like, and we're like, what about real estate in our area? And it's still atrocious, right? And it's sparse and it's terrible. But what about other opportunities? What are these other areas that we can invest in that are going to be these sleeper markets that everyone wished they would have had their little hands in, right? It's the Bitcoin, right? Oh, everyone wishes they would have bought Bitcoin when you could get like 1,000 Bitcoin for $10. This is Bitcoin. This is your Bitcoin. The water industry is your Bitcoin. It's your Netflix. It's all of these things that just kind of crept up. No one paid attention, and all of a sudden now they're household names. And that I am excited. I'm genuinely excited about this opportunity because with water on demand, we're bringing exciting fintech solutions to truly next generation systems and making them an investable asset class.
Hey.
And we've been working on that. I'm very proud to sneak that in there, right?
So Alex asked me, give me one sentence how to summarize what we do. And I hadn't done it before. And I said, and he goes, write that down. Right?
Write that down.
Yeah.
Write that down because
because I never write stuff down. It just goes blah, 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 and then 2 minutes later they go, "What'd you say, Ken?" I go, "I don't remember."
Well, look, in a little peek behind the curtain, right? It's like we have this great idea. How is it that you present it? This is also going to be something you're going to learn and hear about in the raise. So keep yourself toasty on that one.
What do they call that?
For that too.
They call it a callback. It's a callback.
But we've constantly been trying to help people understand, right? We've had past appeals to helping people understand the massive problems that we have, the massive opportunity in the space, and how water in and of itself as a class could actually become an investable asset, but it's still such a hard thing to pin down. And so we've been going down this road continuously, and it's like, no, there it is, right? It's you're able to invest in these water systems and turn them into their own asset class, just like oil and gas, just like energy, just like real estate. But now you have the tax benefits that honestly are super freaking sexy. So anyway, you asked me, Riggs, now you can't get me to shut up because I'm so excited about it. I just want to make sure you guys get all the technical stuff out.
And the funny part is we didn't find them. Remember, they found us.
They did find us.
Interesting, one thing to consider, one of the most interesting areas on Netflix, one of the shows, and this kind of goes back to how many people are aware of what you guys do. Matt Damon has been a major supporter of water and has been in some very successful documentaries about water. And I can tell you right now, those documentaries are on Netflix because a lot of people want to watch it. So it's like, one of the Shark Tank guys taught me, what companies do you want to run with? What companies do you want to invest in? He said, what are the companies that solve the biggest possible problem? What's the scope of the problem they are solving? And everybody has to drink water, right? Everybody.
Absolutely.
And there are billions of people that are water insecure. Billions.
Sure.
That's how big the problem is. And that is one of the things that he taught me. And he's put he's done right well with companies. And I look at what you guys are doing. I mean, that's what I saw. That's why I was interested in the raise, focusing on what you're doing. Because
that's a brilliant point, Bob. Thank you. And I wanted to mention, in addition, 10 years ago, when you started saying things like that, water insecurity, people's eyes glazed over. There was what are you talking about? I turn on my water, it's fine. We're seeing all of these chronic diseases, these immunosuppressed conditions, allergic conditions. They're now saying a big part, Kennedy's saying now it's a big part of it's environmental. Well, there's only two things in our environment. Well, there's three things: food, water, and air, right? I happen to know for a fact that the average person's tap water is not fit for human consumption. If you test it, you'll never drink it again. I haven't drank tap water.
You don't even have to test it. Just smell it.
Smell it, right?
We live east of Ken and I live east of Pittsburgh, and you can get water out of our tap. And if you go and you look at the water standards, and you say the water standards meet and pass or exceed everything that they're supposed to, and then you put the water into a cup from your tap, and you just smell it. You can smell the chlorine.
Funny story. Last week, so I had Josh Will, our social media manager, over to watch the UFC fights. And I got him water out of our RO, right? And he goes, dude, this is the greatest water I've ever drank. I said, no, it's not. It doesn't have tons of shit in it. Excuse my language. Well, I said, it just doesn't smell like. He goes, I got to get one of these. So it's amazing that people are still drinking out of the tap. But getting back to my comment about Bob, what I'm most excited about with we're co-producers of the Rays, right? What I'm most excited about is to open up. This is look. Bob likes to highlight parts of American life that 99% of the rest of America would love to be part of, but would rather watch from their house. It's just stuff that they wouldn't do, right? But they find it super fascinating, right? Yep. American stories. So for Bob to give us the ability to highlight how new emerging companies they could be the next Google, guys.
Right.
They could be the next Yahoo. No, not Yahoo. I'm sorry. They could be the next Google or the next Tesla or something like that. This is an unprecedented opportunity. Bob, I think this show has more legs than maybe anything out there. And if I drink enough coffee while we're filming it, it will be very interesting.
Well, one of the things that, if you take a look at the folks that made, those really successful investments, they typically involve companies that were right at the front end of the adoption curve. They weren't an early adopter. They were just before it at the innovator stage. That's the place you want to park your ass. Excuse me.
Did you read The Innovator's Dilemma? Did you read The Innovator's Dilemma?
Well, I don't think I've read that. All I know is I know the adoption curve.
Yeah, that's almost right out of the book.
Well, if we are taking companies like what Origin Clear is all about, like what you're doing, that's at the innovator stage. And I can tell you now, the companies that I believe we're going to end up focusing on with arrays are the innovators. And what you're doing is right there, innovator stage, before early adopter.
Yep. Thank you. And here's what's very, very interesting. Water is precious to life. It's number one after air, but it is not a commodity. It's been in government hands. It has not been a commodity. If you turn water into a commodity, you'll finally make it possible to really help people with water supply. So we are making water into a commodity by basically standardizing it, because you can't have a commodity that's not standardized. We could get into it, but this is very exciting. I want to bring up here the fact that people can talk to Ken. Yes, he is willing to talk to people. I just wanted to put that right there.
Not just you three.
You never would have guessed that, ever.
Yes, exactly. So schedule a call, and he will brief you on this amazing qualified opportunity zone thing you'll be hearing more about. And Bob, I really want to thank you for showing up. It's been very kind of you. I know that you have a busy Hollywood schedule, and you're a grandmaster. We love you, and we can't wait to do this cool show.
One thing I did want to plug on Bob's behalf here is it's not just going to AmericanStories.tv. Bob, you and your philosophy and how you want to interact with your audience is very unique. Do you want to quickly give them a 10-second pitch on why it's important that they go and sign up on the site?
Well, we actually have been developing something for years, and I actually had a pretty interesting article, two big articles on my theory of developing film, and it's really, surprise, surprise, involve the audience in the creation of entertainment. So what we do is we have people going to AmericanStoriesEntertainment.com, and right there is a little thing right on the nav bar. You make the film, or you make the story. And literally we have just a huge number of people who go through, and the series of survey questions allow them to make their own film. And all of these data points we use to analyze the shows we do. We match them up. We take the what's called a treatment, which is kind of a synopsis of the show, and we match them up against, I think it's 18 different data points. So I was able to predict for years what shows were going to be box office hits simply by using this data. So one of the things we're doing, and we'll I would say within 18 months have over 10 million people participating in this.
That's the plan.
And it's rolling fast. So we'll be able to not only predict we'll be able to see the trends, because in entertainment, you always hit saturation points where the audience goes, I think I've watched enough of this. And you'll literally see the trend bar go down and then the new bar go up. And it's our mission to make entertainment be entertainment again. Now, is our company able to do that by ourselves? No. But what Hollywood is all about is they copy what works. And what we're doing works. And the more people see what we're doing and how it works, we want to we want to be working with many production companies and supplying them with access to this data.
And speed to market is the key, right? Speed to market. So,
Yep.
and that's why we're working together to make sure that we do that with the greatest of haste. Because I'll tell you what, I was blown
Maximum
away
velocity.
by the platform. I just said, wait a minute, these shows are profitable the minute you put them out. He goes, yep. I went, okay, this is great. No, this is great stuff. And so yeah, so folks, if you want to talk with me, I can give you a little bit more kind of early peeks at what Bob and I are cooking about the Rays. That's going to be super exciting. We want to try to get a camera guy out here soon. At least start the early stuff. We're probably looking at maybe late August before it would be on the air. So we want to get cooking on that. But in the meantime, it is a real it's a real entreaty to those of you who have been with us from the beginning. There is now, we thought about this long and hard. When we formed this fund, we could basically keep the whole thing, and we said, no, let's go to the investors. Let's come up with something that will make them part of that nucleus, right? This thing,
early adopters.
right? Yeah, and have them get all of the benefits of its literally of its creation and formation. So reach out to me tomorrow. Riggs and I are going to be providing more color and detail on it, and we'll be able to talk about it as very early next week.
With that, I'm going to thank everyone for showing up. It's been fascinating. Thank you again for Bob for being our April Legend of Water. And you'll be hearing much more about this show. And you'll also be hearing much more about qualified opportunity zones, because there's nothing better for these 8,000 zones than to have water-based businesses operating out of them. So it's going to be amazing. Thank you all.
And a TV show that talks about them.
Exactly. Amazing. Thank you all, and have a good night. I appreciate your coming on board.
Good night.
And more than you know. Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.